Miracles in signs and seemingly impossible recoveries are unusually timed accidents. And when enough people believe in what they are told, dreading the possibility and knowing that a gruesome fate is just around the corner, their boogeyman comes to life. Once, thousands of years ago, an old woman told her disobedient grandchild a story. She said that the gods of night and fear had two sons. One was a thief and the other a vicious animal, and both would steal bad children. This was the first story of the first boogeyman, and that child believed. Those first creatures have changed, but they are no longer the only ones. Their kindred flourished, and where bad children fear the night, the family of boogeymen walks. Once every 100 years, the family meets and plans for another century. Their ranks have changed over the years, growing and shrinking in accordance with human belief. During the Dark Ages, when a man might go to a priest to be relieved of the evil spirit which caused his toothache, there were so many of the family that they seemed more like a legion of soldiers than a group of brothers and sisters. On that warm Thursday night in a warehouse on the water's edge of Sydney, Australia, the family was still strong and large. Not as strong as they had been, but strong enough. If someone wanted a place to get more than 50 specters together, an unused warehouse was as good as any. The watchmen had been handled, and the members of the family came streaming in. Flying, running, crawling on the ground, they came from all four corners of the earth and sported all manner of shapes. But there were always the two breeds, derived, though none of them knew it, from the two brothers of that first ancient story. There were the hairy men, huge shuffling monstrosities, and there were the bagmen, clever and vicious thieves. The hairy men came first. They were the most openly monstrous, nothing but tangled masses of fur, fangs, rags, and gleaming eyes. Some were noticeably beast-like, some were almost human, and several seemed trapped between. Lacking elaborate legends to define them, most of their ranks simply faded into existence, lurking in the shadows. Their leader was Sakantos, a giant with a flensing knife in one hand, the second in command of the family. After them, wary of their more powerful brothers, came the bagmen. Most of them took the forms of withered old men, dressed as wanderers with rough bags or cages in their arms. Despite their similarities, there was a wider variety of myth to be seen here. El Nadaha, an Egyptian woman draped in water weeds, came paddling up to the dock in a little reed boat, while the Czech Hasterman drove himself in a cart pulled by 12 cats. Two of the last to reach the warehouse were a pair of bagmen, Liko and Luomo Niro. Liko, the shorter of the pair, was a Ukrainian spirit. There, he took the form of an old man, dragging a burlap bag in one hand and pulling Luomo Niro behind him with the other. His companion was much taller than he, swathed in black, with eyes hidden behind a fall of dark, dirty hair and a pallid, vacant expression. He trailed behind Liko like a cruise liner being towed by a tugboat. As the last of the family passed by, Liko and Luomo Niro slipped into intangibility and walked through the walls of the warehouse. Their leader, El Kukui, liked to see things done in a traditional manner, and Liko had already been reprimanded once for smoking like a human. No sense in taking chances, especially not at the centennial meeting. The warehouse was an old, sturdy building, a relic of the 1940s, pasted with decades' worth of graffiti. Inside, it was all one huge room, stacked with crates. Small windows set high in the walls let in the vague orange light of the street lamps which lined the pier. The family gathered together, lining the walls. Some crouched in the corners, and a select few hung from the ceiling. Eyes glittered from every rat hole and in the slightly deeper shadow under every bench. There were a few patches of color, the white shroud of a skeletal woman and the faint glow of a 10-foot giant made of blue light. But in most places, the darkness was liquid. A match flared. A small boy flickered into existence in the center of the floor, dressed in shapeless gray clothes. His eyes were closed, but his hand never wavered as he put the match to the flame of an old oil lamp. Then he smiled at his assembled brethren and opened his eyes. They were very pale and entirely white, except for a brilliant red dot glowing in the center of the darkness. "Brothers and sisters, we are all here again," he said. His words had the high, soft fluting sound of a little boy with a gentle disposition. But everybody in the watching crowd had understood that this creature was nothing like any other little boy in the world. Boys don't suck the marrow from babies' bones. "Though the centuries march on, I am El Kukui of Mexico. I have the responsibility as leader of the family." He did not blink or breathe. The physical form was mostly for show. "Since we last met, so much has happened. Humanity has surged forward. Now people spread across the globe quickly, traveling as fast as sound itself. Like deities, they fly high above and work miracles without and within." El Kukui folded his small hands. "My dear family, another century has gone, and once again we remember those who've been forgotten by the living." The flame danced and flickered. Its light couldn't touch El Kukui. Even the tiny spark had more reality than he did. "We come together to remember, as we must," he said. "Wicked Coyote, A rumble came from the assembled ranks of the boogeymen as dozens of voices spoke. "We remember," they intoned. "The old hairy man," the child continued. "We remember. The Baba, we remember." The boy's eyes were fixed on the lamp. "And why do we remember them, O my brothers? For they were forgotten, and we too shall follow in the end." As the last word hung in the air, the darkness seemed to grow lesser. El Cucuy raised the candle and gave the assembled boogeymen a long, knowing gaze. They seemed to be waiting for the next part of the litany. After what seemed to be an interminable length of time, their leader moved. "Brothers," the little voice said gently. The red eyes caught the light of the flame, and they burned like a wick. "My dear family, 100 years ago we moved on. We remembered the children and our duty. That will not be so tonight. 3 of our best have been forgotten." "The children be hanged," rumbled a hair-draped figure, one of the tallest present. "We remember them." It shifted uneasily in the shadows, clearly reluctant to let light fall on it. When a single ray illuminated the shine of greasy paws, they were quickly snatched back. El Cucuy turned against the speaker. "And you are?" he said sharply. "Do I know your face, or has your story changed again? Say your name." There was another rumble, this one resembling a sigh. "I am Talasam, born of Bulgaria," it said in a deep croak. "I am the barn lurker, shadow lover, attic haunter, child eater. And seeing what I see, I do not think that we will meet again when another 100 years have gone by." "Why say you?" said one of the bagmen, his voice heavy with phlegm. A strange bent creature shifted into the light, his bag slung over his hunched back. The lank hair was white, and there was an unhealthy cast to his face. There was more strength there than in any other old man, for just like the creatures around him, he wore his body as casually as a cheap coat. "Bonhomme Satures, man with a bag out of Quebec. 7 o'clock man I is," he said. "I's one of the many, and I's never forget, for all they wants to make us nice. We's not to end, even if they try to turn us on our ears." "Change too much." Talasam's paws clenched, and there was a shine of teeth in the shadows. "We continue to shrink because they do not believe in us. We've had their children's mind for thousands of years, but now their minds will not have us. All of us have felt it, I'm sure. Even the Morco is affected. Look at him. His shape's been changed by a television show." He shot a glance at the wavering blue shape, which gave a mournful bow. Talasam growled at the movement of the glimmering form and bared his own rot-flecked teeth like a dog. "The world's not what it is. Their belief, it's changing, it's wrong, it feels wrong, it tastes wrong. And yet every meeting, all we can do is remember the forgotten ones?" El Cucuy nodded gravely. His manner was as calm as a parent reaching to reassure a crying child, even though the Cucuy was less than half the size of the hairy man. "Talasam, calm down," he said soothingly. "I have things well in hand." The words fell flat. Ignoring the tense silence, El Cucuy looked around and spotted the smile of Bonhomme Satures. "Brother, is there something you wish to add?" I say fear is forever." The old man grinned a horrible grin, displaying crooked teeth turned shiny and brown. "All of us, every single one, all of us, we're all fear, one form or another, bags or cages or hairy pelts like bears. Children will always be afraid. Every time one hinds his head under a blanket, we're there, and we go nowhere. They go nowhere. They go with me." The 7 o'clock man aimed another grin at L'Uomo Nero. "But they don't want to, do they?" he said as flecks of spittle coated his lips. "You just step forward, old man. No need to lurk about in the shadows like you was a tooth fairy." In the dim light of the single candle, L'Uomo Nero looked like a cadaver. The shine of light on his deep-set eyes was like the glimmer on a piece of dark flint. Like most of them, he appeared human. He wore a long black coat, dusty with the dirt of the road, and a wide-brimmed Spanish priest's hat which shadowed his face. He, too, carried a bag. The hem of his coat was damp from the salt spray and the waves which had lapped against the dock. "L'Uomo Nero, the black man am I," he said. "Ghost of Italy, shade of Hannibal, the ghost of Carthage that still hides at their shoulders when they've been bad. Seen across the walking mountains, they fear to go with me. They go and they do not know why and where, and I do not know where, why, or